Right, okay, so we've been pushing on quite a bit. Happy to say I fixed the seat problem. If we just get a nice close-up camera. There we go. So, as you can see, we've gone back and we just used the actual buff colour, so that's the XF55, and then we just gave it a wash of oil over the top, and then we picked out around the sides with a little bit of brown on there, just like that. And just recapping, you can see these are drying off now with the actual wood effect on these, which is looking pretty nice, if I do say so myself. Very straightforward, very, very easy. Now, the other thing as well, I've just painted these up, and I've literally just used a little bit of dark yellow XF 60 on this one, for just doing the belt. So again, by the time that that's got a nice wash over the top of it of oils, it'll darken it down, it'll give it that effect, and hopefully we'll all be good to go. So, down in this section down in here, you can probably see we've got the actual dials have now been put on. These are just decals, so the same thing as we was going around. So all we're going to do now is give them a glassy face. You've got two options with this one. You can either use a clear, literally just a gloss, something else like that, or you could actually use like a Microsol clear. Okay, so we've got this one down in here, Microsol Crystal Clear. The reason I like using this one, I'll be honest with you, is that it's got a little bit more of a glossy look to it because it's deeper. If you put down just a thin layer, it doesn't really have that glass look because it's traditionally thicker. Then all we do, we pick up a blob like this, okay? And then we're just going to sit one on there, one on there, and then we're just going to put one in here. And then we just take a little bit off because we don't need quite as much as that. We're just going to put one there and one there. Okay, now these that are on here, all we're going to do is just smooth them out just a little bit. So we're just pushing to the edges like that. Okay, and we'll let it sit. Now this middle one here has a decal that goes on it, but it's a tiny little one, and I don't think we'll really see it, so we're just going to put those on there like that. Again, when they'll dry, they'll have a nice sort of bulge to it, and then they'll slowly flatten out, okay, when they go crystal clear, and you should end up with something looking like proper glass. And it's that thing about, we talk about light and texture. This is one of those things, because it's glossy, it's going to reflect, and because it's nice and thick, it reflects as well. So when you look down in the cockpit, there's not a lot going down there, but where it is, it'll be reflecting light, catching shadows, things like that, and that's what that one is all about. So what we can actually do, once those dried, is actually bring it all together. We are pretty much there. So as you say, we've got these interiors, and then literally it's going to be a case of this little guy here is going to want to come in onto, I don't know which side it is, onto this side. Okay, so this is the floor one. All right, so basically you've got the little pegs for him to go in the floor. So this slot at the rear, it's going to go to the rear on this one. Okay, and it can be, to be honest, a little bit of a headache just to get this one to stick in, but once it goes in, it will hold its own weight. So then what you can do is just come in with a tiny little bit of glue just under here. Now we have got to put that harness on, so we're not going to put the other end in yet. So we've got this one in here. Okay, so that sits on there, and then we've got the instrument panel, and we can be a little bit careful with this one, but basically what you've got is this square peg here is going to go in the hole there, and then the bar fits through the slot. Okay, so that then comes in literally just like this. Okay, so that will go in there literally just like that, but we're not going to glue that in because obviously we've got to put the floor section in first as well. And the floor section, you've got the little tab here on this guy here goes in the hole at the top, and then this one needs to come in, and it all sort of fits in and goes in. So we're just going to put the pegs in the hole. That goes up into there. Okay, and then we're going to glue, and then in a minute this bottom one we will glue properly once this has started to bite. So we're just going to let those two bite in there. This is biting, and then this bottom plate will push up and go in properly, and it are all linked together. Okay, but I suppose we could attempt a little bit now. Again, we're just trying to make sure it's all in before we go in. And so I don't really want to risk it. In fact, for the moment, I'm just going to pop this out and let that bottom part dry in here. So obviously we've got this one in here. It's going to come up into here. So we're just going to put a little bit of glue just down in there. There is a bit of a spring notion in there, so we're just going to hold it like this just for a couple of moments just to get this to bite. As soon as it's bitten, then we can hopefully get the other side in. There we go. So it's bitten in there now. So that's the floor, but as you can see it's all twisted and out of shape. So it all needs to sort of pull in and maneuver around and everything else. So what we're going to do, just let that bite just for a moment, and then we'll come in, put that back in, get that glued in, and then we can get the other wart in the other side. There's another bar that's going to go in this little hole down in here, and it's going to come across, so we can get that one in. Okay, and then obviously the two halves come together, putting it all in there. Again, just want to be a little bit mindful. You see I've got brown on here. This is off of these. So again, we're going to have to redo those afterwards. It's just because we're rushing it a little bit and it's still wet. Okay, so for the moment, that's just gluing. I just want that bit just to bite in there just for a minute. Then we'll get that other half put in and we'll all be sorted. And again, these can be drying down a little bit. We're just rushing it a little bit. So I'm just going to take my time, make sure we're right, and we'll get those in. Okay, so I've managed to wedge it in, and because it was going in there quite nicely, I've decided not to try and pull it out again. And there we go, it is in. So admittedly, I haven't put the harnesses in yet. I think I can get those afterwards. You can see they're nice and white. We've got it all lined up and looking good. The last bit is the guns. So we've already put this together, little gun unit and everything else. It does need a little bit of a wash. Okay, so then this guy just fits in over the top. And the easiest way to line it up is the gun chutes. So you've got the two gun chutes down in here. It will hopefully line up with both of those, and then you've got the little foot, one on one side, one on the other, and then this fits in nicely into the front, just like that. Okay, and with those all lined up and in, so happy with those. Then what we can do is, I'm not going to glue that in just in case we need to maneuver it around just a little bit, but what we will do is just going to grab a little bit of oils. Again, we've just got over here, so I'm just going to put in a tiny smidge of enamels again. So we're just going to take a tiny little drop of enamels, making up a little wash just here. Again, because this is on a metal, it's going to be quite thick, purely because the enamels and metallizers, they tend to fade in a little bit. And the way you can see that, if you look at the fuel tank, you can see on how much that has cleared itself out. Okay, so what we'll do is we'll just come up with this, load this one up, and we're just going to brush this liberally around the guns up here at the front, obviously not getting it anywhere else but over the metal areas, and then that way it'll give it a nice look. Okay, then again over these, anywhere that's sort of a metal, and again another thicker coat just down in here on these backs. Okay, just so it's all down in there. And again, you can build up the layers as much as you need, but there we go, that's our cockpit section all done. So what we're going to do, to be honest, we're going to leave that well alone for the next couple of hours just to go off, so everything goes nice and clear and everything like that, and then obviously we can fit the harnesses, finish it all off in there. Again, we're not doing wiring, but if you did want to do the wiring, then obviously down in here gives you full details of it. So over on here, if you did want to go through the measures of it, you can see how you're going to put them all in and go through all of that. But really we've done everywhere. The only thing you need to do is the actual cap over here. We need to redo that one. Some great reference photos down in here for doing the wiring and stuff. Okay, and then down here in the back, you've got a little bit of bracing if you wanted to do down in there. This, we've sort of done that as well. Those we've sort of done as well. We're all in with these different ones. So we're looking really very nice with that. We've got to drill out a little hole down in here depending on the version you're doing, and there is some little side ones to open up down in here. Again, it's for rigging coming out and stuff. Now we are going to be doing that, so we will actually open those up. Then obviously you can see you can open up holes for doing various things to the wings. So if you wanted to, you could get on with the wings now and start fitting those together. What I'm going to do whilst we're waiting for things to go off is just push your head just a little bit down into here, and we're actually going to work on the actual engine itself. So what I'm going to do is cut out all these parts here. This is our lovely little engine just down in here. We get all these cut out and everything else like that, start to get it assembled, and then again we can go through the painting and weathering, and that's going to be very straightforward. It's just going to be aluminium like we did those areas down in there, and then that black wash we just made up liberally spread all over this as well as the base. Then afterwards we can add oily type ones, so we come in there with shades of red and hydraulic-y type looking oils, things like that in there to really sort of break it up and make it look oldie worldy. Okay, so the cockpit is looking very, very nice. You can see down in here, we just hit up the close-up. There it is, all looking there and there. The oil work's pretty much dry on it. It's been a couple of days and that's dried. We will give it a coat of clear just to seal it down there and all the rest of it, but that's actually looking very, very nice now. So we're all happy of how that's turned out. So actually what we've got here is the cockpit halves we said before. We have gone around and opened up the holes as is required. The instructions over here do call out for all of those that need to be done. So we've done those, so now we can actually start fitting this guy together. So you've got this lovely little big locating something like that, locating area here, and again the great thing about it is it literally is a drop-in click fit. Okay, I have got a little bit of movement just here at the front, but we're not too worried about that at the moment. Oh, the other thing as well you might notice, we've got the harnesses installed as well, because obviously you need those to go in. Now, as we spoke about before, we haven't done the actual we're just going to use a tool just to push it into the locating on the other side as well to help with the spread. Okay, so as I said, we haven't put any of the actual wiring in there, the various things for the control grips and all of those things, because, well, let's face it, we're not going to see any of it. I have got a little bit of a spread issue in here. It's trying to pull itself apart, but actually the top and everything else you can probably see is pretty much seamless down in there, and that is where we are going to start, because that's the important one. So what we're going to do is just hold it like this. We've got some quick set glue, and we're just going to literally run a small bead up in here, tiny bit down at the bottom. Okay, so we just got those good old fashioned, hopefully they'll reach, pegs. Okay, so just have a peg on the back there. Let's just grab a couple. One I'm thinking just here. These ones I'm throwing everywhere. And then underneath we're just going to pop this in, and actually it does go together fine, it's just for some reason pulling apart at the rear. So we're just going to pop a little bit of glue, and to be honest these ones we will go through the motions of pulling it in. Okay, so we are happy how those all are. Okay, tail is in there fine, all the areas, and we are good to go. So last up we've got this front one. You might notice it's got tiny little pegs here and here. Those go into the rears of this, so it's handy to put a little bit of glue just each side here, because you won't be able to get in there and glue it afterwards. And then this little guy just sits down on the front, and it'll click into those said grooves, which is the nice thing about it. And then it'll centre up all of these other ones. So what we're going to do is just touch. We're not going to brush. And those will whiz around and do its bit just like that. Okay, and that is all in there just like that. Very, very straightforward, very, very easy. Okay, so really what we've done now, we've done down in here. All right, so we've gone through the motions of doing all of those. Then over onto here, as you can see, it's got the wing section, and obviously we've got the lower one, which is this little guy down in here. So there's a couple of little drill holes to do down in these ones. These little tiny little guys just down in here. So we have one just here. Okay, so to be honest, using these gorgeous little reamers from Display, these things literally go through hot butter. Big thing is though, just remember, and I say every time I use this, keep pressure going forward and back, not side to side. Side to side, these things will just snap instantly. Okay, these bits are a little bit better than the cheap knockoff Chinese ones I've had before. Okay, but There we go, we can see we've opened up the holes at the bottom. That's those done, just down in there. Okay, so the big thing is deciding how we're going to paint and when we're going to paint these things and things like that. So from our point of view, we're probably going to do fuselage section, wings, and then they'll be painted separately, purely because the underside's a different colour. It'll be easier to mate up. The other thing as well is certain joins and lines it's supposed to have. Classic example, this is where I went slightly wrong with mine. We put the top wing section together, and you can see I tried to slightly fill these holes here. Trouble is they shouldn't be filled, they should actually be loose. So what I'm going to do is come in here with a blade. Actually, I'm probably going to use a razor blade because I want it nice and square and straight. So what we're going to do is just literally run a blade down these just to make an equal area, because the reality is these are not bad seam lines, these are actually where the wings join, so we want a nice clean mark. Okay, so let's place this little guy down in here, and by using a saw blade it cuts a very nice trench rather than a scribing tool. Okay, so I think that's done, but it should have the gap there and on here. Again, so we're leaving these down at the bottom, we're not going to touch those, they are all good, because eventually obviously this is the top wing section and it's going to go on there just like that. Last up is this little guy here. So depending on the version you're doing, if you're doing the A, which to be honest we're doing that, I can't remember now. This is where my mind suddenly jumps and you're like, how we can't remember now. There's our one. This is it, sorry, we're doing B. Okay, so we want B, so we're doing this one up here, so we need to cut this extra piece off just in here because we have different versions. So obviously you've got different types of windscreen that's going to go up here. So this little guy down in here, we just need to lightly slice off around. There is a little telltale mark just down in here as well, which tells you which areas you're going to cut them and where you're going to cut them to there. So if you wanted to, you could probably use snips to make it nice and clean. Okay, so we've got one snip there, and we've got one snip there. Okay, so this is our part, then that will go on the top, but the thing is this is a different colour as well, so it'd be easier to paint this one a different colour once it's on there. Okay, so again, things like here, we need to remove the actual rim detail on this one, so we can either sand that off or just whip it off with a knife down on there. Then what we actually have here is an extra part which is going to go up and come round. Okay, so we've got this little guy down in here. So what it actually happens is this part goes in afterwards, so that's why it needs to be a nice clean cut as we've done it just like that. All right, so no problem with that one, but basically you've got different types of windscreen on the front, so that's why that is. But again, we can leave that off. Anchor points, things like that, if you want to pop those on, now's probably the time to do it, and then we can start looking at doing the wood treatments and things here on this one, because to be honest it's going to be easier to do those now than it will be when it's all installed, things like that. And again, putting the control surfaces on, depending on how you're going to pose them, you might want to put those on now. But little things like we've got down in here, we've got the little petrol pump system, which is this little propeller on the side, the gun sights, things like that. The tiny bits, you don't probably want to do those yet because they're going to fall off and get broken during weathering and post painting and things like that. That's your different versions with the windscreen one. So I have this little dinky one down here in the middle. Different versions have different ones on there right the way through, depending which one it is. At the same time, obviously, you can work on the engines, stuff like that. That's that top wing section. That's the all important gap. Leave that gap in the top, don't be me. Okay, and then in a moment I'm going to work on the underside with the actual gear. We'll get those and put in. Again, pretty straightforward. Crossbar along the bottom, the two on the top. But again, depending which one you're using, just remember there is different ones. There is aerodynamic versions and not. Next up, you've got the actual engine system. So the engine we've done, so we've done the inside cowling is done in aluminium, and we've done the engine. So we've actually put these headers right the way round the outside of it. Those have all been situated in there, and this rear one, so this will literally just need an oil wash. It's going to have multiple coats of oil onto this one, so it'll be a dark one to give all the shadows, the recesses, basically bring out the detail. Then it's going to have a few oily colour ones in there, so we'll be using little bits of oranges in there and yellows just for that natural oiling colour. And then what we will do though is actually we are going to put in down in here the actual spark plug leads. We are going to put those actually on there into it. So just to add that detail, because it is going to be one of those ones you're going to see. The thing is, they go to the rear of the engine, so from the front part it's just a little bit down in here, the wiring running off. So we will do those, and I'll show you those in a moment when we get around to doing it. Prop, as you can imagine, various things on there, and really we're making our way through. So it might not look it, but actually there's not a lot, a great deal to go on here. So what I'm going to do first of all is going to get a wash onto this. So straightforward oil wash as we've done the others, straight over it just to give it some depth. Then we're going to come in, we're going to do a little bit of wiring on this one, just a tiny little bit. I'll show you that in a minute as well, and then that completes that. That'll be put aside completely until after the paintwork's done and after everything's on. Same time, we've got to do that gear, so I'm going to get that one done, and then we can think about actually getting some paint on it. Okay, so we pushed on, as you can probably see down in here, quite a bit. So what we've got down in here is basically been putting it all roughly together. So as you can see, we've gone through the motions. All right, so two halves gone together, dead simple. A little bit of sanding work and blending work just on there. That's gone in there, no problem at all. Okay, so then we put the tail on. So the tail literally just clips in the back. It is as simple as that. It's very straightforward, easy one to put in. The rudder and tail assembly has gone in as well, no problem at all. Wing assembly is just a case of push straight up underneath and it's glued in, and being, as we know, wing that wings, it is absolutely gorgeous and flawless. Okay, so very, very straightforward on that. Okay, cowling just around the front, we fitted that in, that was very straightforward. And to be honest, we put the control surfaces in, the actual ailerons have been fitted to the wings. Don't forget, you need this big old chiseled area around it for the actual deflection. Obviously it's got the movement going up and down and things like that. The same time we've done this one, we spoke about before, we said we were going to do it, we've got the actual wheel assembly. So we've actually got the main area. So really on this it's very straightforward. You've got your crossbar coming across with the actual axle on, the two uprights, and then we've got this brake assembly type calipers on each end. Those go on, and then the wheels will eventually have a couple of little C-clips which actually hold them on and make them workable. But from our point of view, we need those on and off so we can actually paint those. All right, so that's going to go in there like that. One of the big things we've done is this little guy here. So in here, as you can see, we've gone through and we've done the actual engine, okay, and we've just weathered it. So it was that silver, and to be honest, all we used was these two. So we just use engine oil, which gives it this sort of oily colour, as you can see, and then we got down in here the actual engine wash colour. All right, just to right the way over it, and we left the back part with these uprights in that standard aluminium colour. So then this then just comes along and will eventually just sit straight in here just like that, and that gives us our front end for our rotary engine, which you could rotate it if you wanted to. All right, and that is it. Really, really straightforward. So what we need to do now is mask up down in here, okay, and then actually think about getting some primer onto this, because obviously we're going to be painting it basically threefold on this one. We've got that light linen colour underneath, which we're going to do plenty of weathering with, trying to weather it down and make it all look more fabric-like, for want of a better word. Okay, right the way under here. Then on the top we've got this brown, which will be a custom mix, because as far as I know nobody actually does it. So we'll be making a custom mix just for the top, and then this front end and around the front of the cowl here and everything like that has this other colour, which down in here we can see it's quite an odd shade of colour. This is the one we'll actually be doing. All right, so down in here, as you can see, it is quite a strange sort of with the standard, but up here's this buff. Again, it shows a mix and it talks about colour call-outs, doing it with Tamiya. That's that underside colour in the top, but it'll be a lot easier doing those separate after that's done, because obviously we need to dry brush it, we need to do some weathering with it and various things. All these things are going to be knocking around everything else. Then we can come along and we can put the small little details on. So we've got a bomb rack that's going to go on the bottom, for instance. We've actually got some gauges, some propeller driven pumps, things like that. Those need to be fitted. We'll put those on afterwards. We've done them down here as well. So we've got the guns. They'll be fitted, obviously, as you can imagine, afterwards, and then it'll be all that rigging and the push and pull rods and things like that for the control surfaces. We'll do all those as a separate once it's all been painted. So really we were just letting this dry off a moment, making all those go in. We'll get it masked up, we'll get a coat of primer onto it so we can see what we've got. We make sure we're seamless and we've got everything where we want it to be, and then we can start working our way through the painting. Okay, so over in the spray booth, a little bit of a tidy up. Primer time. So primer of choice for me at the moment, which does change quite a lot, I know, but really is the AK Interactives grey primer. It's microfiller primer. AK's 758. They do it in black. They also do it in white as well. If you wanted to get those, there's the white one down in there. So quite handy, but grey, obviously universal colour. It's great for doing anything. Okay, the beautiful thing about this, you just put it in a bottle, you have it, you shake it, you bung it in your airbrush neat, and you spray it. That's it. There's nothing else more complicated about it. It doesn't really matter how you spray this either, so you can just put it down as you like. Now, admittedly, we have done... through. There we go. We have done the metal area down here. Chances are it's going to get overspray on it. I'm not that worried about it at all, because at the end of the day we can easily just put that back in and do it again. All right, but what we do need to do is obviously get a nice coat of primer onto this. So you can probably hear airbrush is running away, but that's the whole point. It's a primer, so a nice high air pressure. Okay, so we're looking for seams. To be honest, this seam underneath here, what I did was I just used a seam scraper, which is this little guy here. If I get hold of it, tricky on a flat surface. This little guy, and we just scraped this bottom seam, and it's put a little bit of a dip in it, and it works lovely. So we actually used the biggest one it's got, which is this little guy down in here, and just took that seam out, and that's it. It's as simple as that. So what we're going to do, hit the extractor. All right, so we're just going to put onto here a coat of primer. Nice good thick coat. So remember your seam checking as well as preparing for paint to go on this. So we can just come along. So as you can see as well, we've masked up the top with a little bit of foam. There we go. Done. Quite a heavy coat, nice and thick. We're not going to lose any detail or anything else like that, so we can get away with quite a heavy one. Again, the woodwork on the side, not worried about it. We will literally go round and we will do it all again. It will only take a few moments to do that. Okay. Tails. Alright. So we've just got this little bit to do just on the end here. I'm wondering if I can hold it via these. Probably taking my life in my hand, but hey ho. This is where they snap off. Alright, so that's that one, and then leading edges, and that's it. Grey primer done, literally just like that. And what we'll do, we'll just stand him on his back, like that. Fine. A little bit more, just along the bottom. There we go. Just getting dark there. To be honest, I had a little bit of black paint in here, and it's melting this stuff down. So what we're going to do, reload, and we're just going to do the top wing. So we've got it all primered up. Let that dry for around about 24 hours. Come back, and we can start getting paint on it.